Guys, welcome back to today's show. We have Jeff on. He is, I would say, number one for all things wineries, breweries, distilleries. When it comes to, let's just say he's the best broker around for them. He's
Thank you.
extremely knowledgeable. And let's have some words from Jeff about his experience out there in the field.
Hey, well, thank you for that introduction. I appreciate it. And I ended up in this specialty as I was going through some changes in my business and looking around and really realized that in the small to medium space in the alcohol manufacturing and surrounding businesses, so wineries, distilleries, breweries, distributors, suppliers, what have you, there was no one that really understood the industry that was helping people on that level. You had a lot of generic brokers that would dabble in that space, but there's some incredible nuances of the alcohol business that are very different from regular businesses, and most brokers don't understand that stuff. So that's how I ended up here. And as you can see from behind me, I'm certainly an enthusiast. It's kind of one thing led to another. And of course, here I am. So I help people sell, but it's not always just a sale. It can be a strategic, it can be a merger, it can be helping them find money. We're in an interesting market today. That's a nice way to put it.
Generous way,
Yes.
very generous.
Yes. I'm not as doom and gloom as some. I follow the industry a lot. I go to the conferences. I've spoken at the conferences. I see glimmers in the trends that kind of look like we've either hit bottom and maybe slowly on the way back up. We're not going to have a boom. We're not going to have a COVID boom again.
I
But
hope not.
no, for many, many
Here
reasons.
we
But I think the worst is behind us, but it's a different industry now, and the drinking population is different, and, we're competing against, a youth that doesn't drink and cannabis and all kinds of different obstacles out there that weren't really here, 5, 6 years ago. We were in a heyday in 2021, 2022. But there is consolidation, the people that realize one is everything cycles, and two is right now is a good time to find bargains per se. You're at least not paying overly inflated prices like we saw happening during that COVID boom. There were some deals that happened then that wouldn't have happened today. So they can get things for at least the right price. So I do have buyer activity in a good way. So, it's if it's somebody that needs to sell or needs to grow to be able to attract distribution, whatever it might be, I'm a connector. And sometimes I make the right connections and I actually make some money out of the deal, only if it works for everybody else.
Jeff, if I can ask you, is there, I believe that there's some form of life cycle going on over here. Most of the artists got into the space, in particularly the distilling industry, in say 2010, the early 2000s in their 50s, and at this moment in time, they're like, I just want to retire. Is that something that can be leveraged for a purchase? And is it asymmetrical if you're offering to carry on the brand name? There's a lot of moving parts that a lot in winery in particular. It's not like a car mechanic. People are emotionally invested in it more. And is there efficiency you could bring to the space if you're younger? Just that's something I've always wanted to know.
Efficiency and energy in almost any business. When I see an acquisition, especially if it's a retirement situation, just new energy seems to bring 20% increases in the first few years. If you think about especially that distiller that's been at this for 10, 15 years, the energy that they had when they started, the excitement, they might not have that same excitement today. Now they're going through the daily work and they've tasted so much of their product that, they're not as into it maybe as they once were. I sold a popcorn business once that I would walk in there and the thing smelled it just smelled like heaven, freshly made popcorn. And the owner said, "Oh no, you do this for 5 years every day, and it's not the same." They might be in that stage to where they know what to do. They're doing most of it, but they're not really putting the same energy in as they were 15 years ago trying to grow the business. And then they have, these battles that they're having with the industry right now on top of that, and it gets a little frustrating. There is value. That's one of the things I do. By knowing the industry, I can help people a little differently than a generic broker because I understand the industry and help them put a number on their business. Aged inventory in the whiskey business gets more valuable, not less valuable, like aged shoes. It's a lot different.
Can I touch
So
upon that for a second?
yes, yes, absolutely.
So, I've had this question for many years. I might be completely wrong. Someone comes to look at inventory and looks at their businesses. Let's pick a distillery. They have 10 years worth of inventory aging. So when you an acquisition, you look at the books of the distillery that's selling it. How does that aged spirits look in the tax reports? Is it showing it's appreciating or depreciating?
So in the tax reports, so that's a big can of worms that we'll dive into a little bit.
Yes.
None of us, once I heard it explained wonderfully from a financial
Just
advisor.
just a disclaimer, guys. This is not legal or tax advice. This
Yes,
is
yes,
just two guys in the space talking, okay?
yes. I like that. So I heard a financial advisor explain it this way. As business owners, we're okay with paying taxes. We just don't want to pay the tip. And
No
there's
tax on tip.
rules and laws put in place for business owners to take advantage so that they don't pay, so that they can save some on their taxes. One of those, like you said, is depreciation. Just because you've depreciated something on your tax return doesn't mean that it's changed the realistic value of it. So when you go to sell a business, beer has a life, I get it. It's got a shelf life. Wine and spirits, whiskey gets more valuable in the barrel with age. Most spirits are fine in the bottle for a certain amount of years. Wine for a pretty long time is fine in the bottle and actually appreciates. So we understand that. And the buyer in this industry understands that, or they're in the wrong industry. If it's something so I'm not an inventory appraiser. And if we get into a situation where we need that for a bank or something, I have resources. I have people that do that for a living that are accredited that can come in and put those numbers together. But again, the big story, and I go back to shoes because I just talked to somebody, big podiatrist company today, and I sold one of those years ago that had just a bunch of old stuff laying around, and it was probably at cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they got tens of thousands of dollars out of it. Well, that's not the way alcohol works. It's very different. It's going to keep that value and again, in many cases, appreciate no matter what you've done on your tax returns. So kind of a long answer to that question, but
It's exactly what it is, a long answer, because
yeah,
I've had the request a distillery that's in foreclosure. They're saying they have estimated value between 1 million and $10 million worth of inventory. And the what's going on over here? And I looked at the person. I said, first of all, you're not paying me, um, so you can't hold me. You ask me as a friend. I'm happy to share information, but don't go invest on my word. And I said, you have to understand, whiskey aged has value. Question mark. Meaning to say, is this distillery brand going to be successful? They made the whiskey. That question is dependent on the buyer. If you're passionate, okay, you get a guy that has a smile, like we said before. This distillery's been open for 20 years. The guy, when you walk into the distillery, he doesn't even look when you walk in. He's just so tired, so
yeah,
burnt out. So he can't move a 10-year-old bottle of bourbon for $40 because he can't smile. He can't make the sale.
exactly.
If we look at the average age of bourbon on the shelf, it's usually between about 4 years. So 10 years should be a commodity in a sense. What we're missing over here, and the reason why, by the way, it's 10 years old is because he hasn't made a sale in 6 years. He hasn't smiled. So now we have a question. Is there a distiller or a face for a distillery, and that is the purchaser that has a smile? And like you said, bring it up 20% to come into the distillery or winery or brewery. A brewery we'll leave out for a second, like you pointed out so well, it doesn't have that age factor as much. And smile, because I can tell you from my experience, if you have a 10-year bottle of bourbon and it's decent, you probably could get $100 for it. You got to build up a fan base, 80 to $100. So now that's your swing. It's between a million and $10 million. You got
Yes.
wholesale, barreled, clearing out inventory. You gain what? $8,000 a barrel, maybe. You get a bottle, you get the smile. These are my thoughts. You got a sale at a much higher premium.
Yeah, you're dead on. And that's so people don't buy businesses for status quo, even when it's a good business, even when, not everything is distressed. There are plenty businesses that are healthy today that are concerned because they kind of want to retire or move on, and they're worried that they're going to be devaluated. And they're not. I mean, look, and who knows where things will go, but Sazerac has a $15 billion offer out there for Brown Forman, which most people believe is overpaying for the brand. That's obviously a little bit different level of scale, but we have things all the time that fit a certain buyer. So if your business is healthy and you're thinking, man, when is this going to swing? Do I need to wait another 5 years? It doesn't cost anything to evaluate and to try to sell. At least in my case, I'm performance based. If I don't help somebody merge, sell, partner, whatever they're looking for, I don't get paid.
Jeff,
So yes,
just to that point, because you bring something very, very, I find very interesting. So we're saying that Cesaric had a $15 billion offer on Broman Foreman, right? That should take it to any of your potential clients as a vote of confidence in the industry, because you have the biggest player in the U.S., I believe, or one of the top of the U.S.
good
companies,
size.
pretty good size, making I believe it was a cash offer of sorts.
It's so there it is because Sazerac is private, Brown Forman is public, so they have to buy the stock. They can't just trade stock for it. The original Pernod Ricard offer was really a merger and was not a cash offer. So Brown Forman, or excuse me, Sazerac kind of stepped it up and Pernod Ricard disappeared. Now, whether that was a strategy, whether this thing goes through is hard to say, but yeah, they're offering a big chunk of money. And again, the same thing is happening for you've got different levels. Healthy alcohol businesses I get calls for every day, and they're not discounted. They're not blown up like they were in 2022, but they're priced fair, they're priced correctly. There's no reason to think you're going to have to wait for 5 years to get out of the business. Most businesses never bring a premium, but there's always a market to find somebody that needs something that you have, whether it's the tangibles, the intangibles. Put it this way, there's always a better option than just closing the doors. If you've got a brand, if you've got product, even if you're an NDP, there might be somebody out there that wants to get in the business, and rather than start things from scratch, they've got a name, they've got a label. That stuff, as takes time, it takes money.
It's
If you're
legal.
not producing your own wine and somebody's producing it for you, it's still saving somebody 6 to 12 months to market. You have something in your hands.
Completely. And you have, just for the real newbies out there, you can't just print the label and put it on a bottle.
No.
It's a process. So, to Jeff's point, there's tremendous value on a value that you don't even know exists often.
Exactly. It's there's always something there, and a discussion, we can kinda get an idea of what that something is. Frankly, the buyer sets the price. You just don't know what the buyer's really looking for, and if you find a strategic that you've got just what they're looking for, it's worth more to them than it might be to you.
What you're saying is fantastic because, say, New York, there was a lawsuit with Hudson because Hudson was saying they're a New York distillery. And just, I believe this is a story. They were distilling in New York, bottling in New Jersey, and they won the lawsuit. And they're a New York distillery. They could do the DTC and all of that. But if you were that New Jersey distillery in that location at that point, when Hudson decided that for whatever reasons they need a bottling plant in New Jersey, that license for that, and all they're doing is using the bottling facility, had immense value because Hudson, when they made in New York, probably because of workers' comps, I'm taking a stab at my state, force him to bottle elsewhere. So the value is so much by the buyer and the lucky guy that had that license if they purchase a license. So it's really a lot more than you might think. Hey, it sucks. I'm located in Newark, New Jersey, or wherever it is. Well, who's going to buy my license? But there's many use. You have the license in place. You have things in place. That's value.
There's always something there, especially in the alcohol business, and not even just because of where the market is today. It's thinking outside the box. It's meeting people. It's knowing other people. Be and I kind of touched on it a little bit before. Getting distribution requires scale. The distributors have 200 companies a year wanting them to distribute their products. You have to have a compelling story. You have to have support. You have to have marketing. Well, maybe you can't afford to do that at your scale. But what if you put together two or three or four brands that are your size under one per se umbrella? Now you have the scale to interest distributors and support the marketing money. There's a lot of ways to skin a cat out there.
Whoa, Jeff. For the distillers out there, it's time to get to know your neighbors and the wineries and the breweries because if you all team up, you're given the product. Let's walk this through what Jeff just said so nonchalantly. Okay, you're a distillery. You got three in the neighborhood. Stop calling up the distributors yourself. Get the other three. You could be a beer brewer, distiller, and winery. Work together, say for New York, and say, we got a New York package for you. And we all know the Floridians down south as a fifth borough of New York, love New York product. Just a little sense of humor, and let's get down there. And this is something that the distributor might say, it gives me value that I didn't have before. And then you can budget as well to make that happen because you're dividing the pie. Don't ask me for how to divide the pie based on sales or quantity or whatever. Leave me.
And that's where I get together and I help people negotiate these things and, just look at it through a different lens. What can we do to help everybody to where it's beneficial for everybody all at once. Does not have to be a sale. You don't have you then you have the other choices. Are you if you're wanting to exit, yeah, then maybe it's some kind of merger and you're sitting in the background somewhere and ready as soon as the size is to make your complete financial exit. Some people, it's just that there's not enough money to fulfill that dream. Well, can we merge? Can we find an investor? There's a lot of different answers there. You might love distilling. You might love the running the tasting room. You might love talking to the customers. Well, maybe you continue doing that part if that's your joy. It's a different answer for everybody I talk to, which is part of, I mean, I've been a business broker for 15 years and it's never the same. I'm not a cubicle guy. And frankly, people that are making alcohol products are not cubicle
Yeah.
either.
Let's talk to that point because on my software, that's something that is tremendous. I use emphasis on mine. If you're making whiskey, you were probably not the one that excelled at Excel in school.
Yes.
Okay. If you're lucky, you barely made it through. You probably, and this is fantastic what Jeff just said for you distillers, you probably It's your baby. Look, I'm gonna talk from my own experience. It's your baby. You built the distillery and you want it to be all of yours, okay? You really do. But think about that struggle when you wake up in the morning and you're like, "Oh my goodness, there's bricks on my head." Your wife's ready to kill you because she knows you're not gonna be home till 12 because it's not just making the whiskey, which is what you promised you're only gonna do. You're only gonna make whiskey. And you remember just it's too funny. Remember what he told your old friends that all I want to do is make whiskey all day? Okay. It's Friday. How much whiskey do you make this week and how much time do you spend doing everything else? If you feel like most distillers, you probably gotta speak to Jeff. Sorry, I just gotta make that plug because it's really a point you have to take stock after being in the industry in the space for some time and realize the reason why you're burnt out, most distilleries, most people that start off in the craft, is because you're not doing what you love. And not only that, you're probably not making an income. You're barely just getting by. And that's because you're doing what you hate. School again, okay? So maybe it's worth looking at taking a partner, making something bigger and greater. Yes, less ownership, but you never wanted to own the books anyways. Anyways, this is just a pet peeve of mine.
And the other part of that, to follow up with what you just said, is the value can always be increased by running more efficiently and profitably. That's where your software comes in. It's getting kind of doing two things. It's getting the stuff off the owner's back that they
Eh,
really don't want to do. It's not where their joy is. Even if they're chemists, even if they're numbers people, you're going to help them concentrate where they're best at, where they're really beneficial. Then the other part of that is the more efficient the business becomes, the more profitable the business becomes.
true.
So it's gonna increase value if you're not if especially if your long-term, medium to long-term is to merge or partner or grow or sell, you gotta be more efficient and preferably before you make those steps. Helps the valuation, does everything.
And to that point, if you're the sole man on the distillery, winery, or brewery, people are scared to buy it because what happens when you're gone? You're the sole attraction. And this is what I've seen at least. You need a team so they're like, okay, we can have a healthy transition. You know, it's not all hopefully in the guy's brains. When that head walks out, what are we gonna do?
It's and there's so many in the small level that the owner is the distiller, the taster, the blender, and then I've seen others that train their people. It's not an overnight thing, but if you can put together the team to where you are not the magic, there's a book called The E-Myth that's a very basic book that
I gotta
talks
read it.
about that every owner in the beginning is everything from the janitor to the CEO and everything in between. But you really want to get your business to where you're in a perfect world. If you gotta get out today, you gotta get out today. I get it. But in a perfect world, you want to be the CEO. You want to be making the bigger decisions. You want to be guiding the ship. You don't want to be down in the minutia. And you want to, in an alcohol brand, taste is everything. You still want your fingerprints on the taste. But if you're the only one that has that capability, not only does it affect your value to a purchaser or a partner, you're going to make your bank pretty nervous too if you're borrowing money. Because what happens if something happens to you? There's no one that can carry that on. So having that team is a very, very valuable thing. Done talks. My last talk at ADI was really discussing those items that really need to be in place to make your business more valuable, more saleable.
So why do you see artists not doing that or the CEOs? What's the fear? What's the concern?
I don't think it's a fear. There's a couple reasons. One is, again, most people getting into this business are craftspeople more than business people. So that's where it starts is, they love making wine, they get into the business, they make good wine, but then there's the whole business side that you've been talking about. And then what happens, business does grow because they're good people, they're good at what they do, And then it just starts just enveloping you to where you just don't even have the time to go back and deal with the business side, learn about the business side. It's hard to see the forest through the trees. That's where sometimes you step back and are able to look at things a little different, realize what you need to do. One thing that I've done and continue to do is just like meeting Ben, just putting together resources that can help people make their business more presentable. Again, whether it's a sale, a partner, a bank, an investor, a private equity group, an angel, whatever it might be, they all want to see certain things that will increase the value of what you have.
Just understanding that. So this guy, most distillers, wine, I'm sure, again, just speaking for the distilleries, it's scary to pick up the phone. I mean, you're a really nice guy. How does it work?
As I said, unless somebody wants to do things otherwise, and there's certain situations where it might warrant it, but very few. It all starts kind of like today with the conversation. What are you doing? What's your situation? What's your needs? Can I help? Can I not help? I can't help everybody. Sometimes I'll refer somebody out, I'll make suggestions, I'll walk away, I'll keep in touch. Um, if I can help, then we'll maybe evaluate, we'll talk numbers. I get things out to market. I've got a network that's just growing every day in the alcohol space and people that are looking. I just got a message yesterday and called somebody that I talked to months ago that has exactly what this person is needing. So I messaged them. We're going to talk this afternoon. It's all about putting those connections together. I work on success fees. I don't charge retainers. I don't charge to evaluate. If I'm able to put something together that works for somebody, that's when I get paid. The other big key is I do everything confidential. If you look at bachbusinessbrokers.com, you're not going to see names of anybody, any company on there. Employees shouldn't know, customers shouldn't know because they get nervous. Suppliers shouldn't know, banks shouldn't know. There's a
At the
right
same
time for
time,
that, you know? Yeah. I've done 150 of these. I know when the right time is to start talking to the landlord, to this person, to that person, and just they're holding people's hands through the whole process. I put together it's like putting together a big giant puzzle, and if I can get the last piece of the puzzle in place, that's when somebody owes me money, and it comes after they get their money. So it works pretty well, and there's a lot of times where it's just, "Let's stay in touch," or, "Here's somebody, like Ben that you need to talk to that can help you with your efficiencies, you need more money, well, let's see if we can get some people to help you bring your business to where it's worth more money." I'm just a matchmaker, and if I can make a match, it's gonna help everybody.
so like this is months later that they're picking up. How does this work? You're writing it down, work people through the mindset in the industry because I'm sure a lot of people will need instant help. Let's get into people's minds. You got a plan.
And if there's instant help, so let's say they're in trouble, like big time. Again, I've got a big network, and there's sometimes people that can bail them out with at least enough to get them out. Sometimes it's help of, "Hey, I've got things going on, but I'm not making money. I've got to get over the hump." I might point them out to resources. Some of them, "Hey, I want to sell, but I need 2 million and it's worth a million." Well, I need to hook you up with this person, this person, this person. I'm not a consultant. I'm not going to charge you to come in and fix your business. I know people in all different areas of the industry that you should talk to, and talk to this person and this person, talk to a few at the same time and deal with who you like. And there's no obligation on any of that. I'll still be doing this in 5 years when it is worth 2 million and you're ready to sell and you're going to remember me, or somebody else is going to be in position and you remember, "Hey, there's that guy that helps people in the alcohol business." So it's
Wow.
just knowing that I exist
Your
when you're ready.
asset.
Yes,
Your
that's
asset.
That's what I try to be. follow me. I get you on an email list. We do articles. I've got an article probably coming out later this week about exactly what we're talking about today is consolidation in the industry options. We're always putting articles out. I've published in some magazine. We just had one in Artisan Spirits magazine. Um, I'm plugged into the industry heavily.
Well, you're giving us some optimism here.
Well, good.
It's not all doom and gloom, it seems,
No, no. I like being a glass half full, especially when it's whiskey. So, all good.
and a large glass at that.
Yes, yes.
Can you give us some just like a wild story? Because that always feeds people. Like,
So, and I won't hit on any one particular story, but this is how so in small business, you're not only just dealing with stresses, you're dealing with emotions, you're dealing with all kinds of crazy things. When I started in this business in 2000 and trained, he loved stories. He was an amazing broker. He's since passed. He was an amazing broker, and he on almost every part, which is a lot of moving parts to this, he would relate a story to it. And some of these were wild stories. They're drinking stories. I've got some stories, but I thought he was making this stuff up. I really did because they were just so far-fetched. You're small business, they're not always business people. There's all kinds of things going on in the family and in life. And I got about 2 years in and had had enough of these stories myself where I realized he wasn't making this stuff up. And I told him, we became good friends. And I told him his name was Dennis, and I said, "Dennis, I really thought you were making that stuff up." He looked like, "Really?" But I mean, I sold marinas that were flooded when they sold. I sold restaurants. I sold a restaurant where the lady had convalesced her husband through health problems, and she was drinking heavy, and I literally had to pick her up at 7 in the morning to keep her sober on the way to the title company. I've just had a lot of interesting stuff go on, and again, it keeps it from being boring.
you're dealing with people.
I enjoy it. If I help people, I make money. The old Zig Ziglar thing, if you help enough people in life, you'll get what you want.
Just, walk through the emotions on a sale, especially, I think they're saying now the Brown Foreman one fell through because of family. It was a family business. So how would you deal with that? You could say I plead the fifth on that, but it's something that's now in the media very openly. Family business sale.
So you should ask my wife because she gets to listen to some of these phone calls sometimes.
The therapist is coming out now.
Yeah. So in real estate, you have a fixed thing, a piece of property. It gets appraised. Maybe there's environmental study. It's a thing. When you add a business, you add 20 times the moving parts. In real estate, buyers and sellers rarely even meet each other, so the emotions stay out of it. For the most part, a broker or an agent's going to see that stuff. But in a business acquisition, you've got to get to know your buyer, your seller, because you need them both directions. So it is very complicated, a lot of moving parts. It is an emotional roller coaster. There are struggles keeping these things together. There's a lot of brokers, a lot of business brokers in this world that can start a deal, but you have to be able to finish a deal. And there's not always challenges, but there are often challenges. Again, that's where it comes to that I've got to get that last piece into that puzzle. And I don't know what the challenges are going to be. I've got a few going through banks right now that banks are a challenge. I've got all different balls in the air that I'm juggling that the buy side and the sell side won't see all of that because a lot of times I'll put those problems in their place before anybody else has to deal with them. So it's a lot of my time is spent on finishing the deal and dealing even with attorneys that are writing deals up and you know, wanting to bill hours and they need to know that they need to get a deal done, just every different direction that I have to at least have a good enough understanding to be able to coach somebody through getting to the finish line.
I mean, for a winery, brewery, and a distiller in particular, you might need to even train the incoming, the new owner. How do you manage that relationship? You got the
So usually, yeah, and usually industry training or that specific business training, that's gonna come after the deal closes because otherwise you're
That's
giving away
smart.
trade information, but that's part of a contract. Training is some things I have fit a standard contract, and my standard contract has fill in the blanks for training, fill in the blanks for no compete, finance contingencies, knowing banks that will do things in the alcohol industry,
Ooh, that's a
which is
big
pretty rare,
yeah,
especially in
that I know.
today's age. Just talk to the Uncle Nearest bank. There's
Ooh, shit.
not an easy time
Oh,
for
no.
banking in the alcohol industry today. So it's
Can you
that's where it
share
goes back to network.
can you just share what's going on with Uncle Nearest for the general audience that does not know the story? And I see it all over the place, but I'm in the space. Someone getting into it, just explain like a little bit of the history and how things are happening.
So, and I'm kind of in the same space as you. I don't have any hand in the Uncle Nearest thing, but Uncle Nearest is a
Not yet.
Tennessee whiskey. Yes.
After this
Uncle
show,
Nearest is a
they know where to
Tennessee
go.
whiskey brand that was growing very well, had a great story, had good product. Everything seemed to be going right. Good people. I've met the ownership at bourbon festivals and what have you. And then all of a sudden, the bank saying that they're not getting paid. And there's $108 million primary bank loan that is defaulted on, and probably $50 million of private debt, friends, family, investors. And so so it was forced into receivership because the receivers are saying that there is probably maybe 25 million in assets, and that's a big shortfall. So the company doesn't want to let go, they don't want to close, they don't want to go away, but a receiver's job is to get some kind of continuation so that you can get as much of the debt as possible paid. It probably will be sold off for a fraction of that $108 million, and the private investors may end up with little to nothing. Very hard to predict. It's a big enough name and a big enough brand and a big enough story that hopefully it continues on. And it may be a bargain for somebody. It's interesting to watch just because there's so much going on, but it is not a pretty story
No.
by any stretch.
An interesting point, and this goes back to why Jeff should have been the first phone call. From what I'm reading, if it would have been done quietly, it would have wound up with a lot more value simply
Yes.
because people are not going there anymore. It used to be packed, they said weekends. And again, this is all from reading. Tell me if I'm
Yes.
wrong, but now it's empty. So there's a lot of damage being done because it's public.
And that's why everything should stay confidential, literally until the deal's done. And that's things that I advise to. Again, I'm not a consultant, but I know what is best for your business. Awesome. So yeah, so that if people are in trouble, and that's a good lesson on a different scale. I mean, Uncle Nearest was a huge deal. I can help if you get to me in time. The probably a really good note in any case is don't wait too long. Don't wait too long to at least start learning, starting the conversation, see if there's any possibility, see if I know somebody that I can make connections, so on and so forth. Make the phone call. It doesn't cost anything. It may give you some peace of mind or some direction, a little bit of history. And I guess it's real appropriate with today's times. I got into business brokerage because I owned a motorcycle dealership in 2009, and that was not a good time to own a motorcycle dealership. So I crashed and burned. I've seen the dark side, understand that side of the business. And there's probably deals that I take on just because I don't want to see somebody end up in that same situation that I ended up in.
I mean, that is the pain right now in the street, but no one wants to admit it. And let's just go straight to that.
Yeah, it's there's usually alternatives. There's not always. And when there's not an alternative, then you got to plan accordingly. And what do I have that's got value? What arrangements can be made with any debtors? There's even if I can't help, I can often give advice. If there so there's situations where things are dire, and oftentimes I'll talk to the bank, I'll talk to the landlord. It wasn't in alcohol. I just helped somebody with a steel business that had gone through some family tragedies. It really wasn't their fault, but they were in trouble. And at the right time, I talked to the bank, and everybody at the end of the day was happy enough. And we got a deal done and frankly, got the seller out of a bad situation and got the bank out of a bad situation as well.
Whoa, you seem just like a pro at this negotiations.
Doesn't always work. Can't, I tell people I can't guarantee you that I can sell your business, but I'm pretty darn good at it. I love what I do, and I'm good at brokerage in general, and I'm good at this space. I like this space. It's my favorite. It's not all I do. It's about 50-50 right now. Is alcohol related versus generic. I've been doing it so long, I get referrals all the time on generic stuff. And I do pay referral fees, by the way. So somebody that knows another alcohol business that needs my help, if that works out, they can stuff here. Hopefully I've helped people.
All right, so yeah, let's wrap it up. I'll just let me get back on. Here we go. So, Jeff, I mean, I've learned tremendous amount over here. Number one, call before you're in pain. But if you're in pain, call before it's the end of the game. Am I summing it up right?
You are. And I can give my phone number, my
Go for
website.
it.
So my phone number can call anytime is 314-941-8530. That goes directly to me. My website is what you see kind of on the screen. It's bachbusinessbrokers.com. And my direct email is jeff@bachbusinessbrokers.com. I would love to talk and help. And even if it's just a referral that I can pay you for, reach out.
Guys, Jeff is the best guy in the space. Look, he's even patient with my little one over here.
I've got three. They're just not little like that anymore.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.